Town of SilverPlume in the Cumberland Continental Divide belonged to the oil-rich towns of Breckenridge and Leadville. However, after completing the Georgetown Loop in 1884, a separate railroad known as the Denver South Arctic Pacific had feeding the GD&L to Breckenridge and Leadville from a different direction. Therefore, the tracks west of SilverPlume were given up and the GD&L was absorbed into the Colorado Central. Later on, in 1893, when the Sherman Silver Purchase Act was repealed, the price of silver had then dropped so low that mining for it was no longer profitable. The miners therefore up and left the mines. The railroad was left floundering, wondering what to do in order to stay efficient. As the railroad wondered how to keep the cash flowing, the fame of the Georgetown Loop was spreading around the world as a smooth and enduring marvel of the 19th century. The railroad capitalized on that fame and began running tourist passenger trains up the canyon. It was very fashionable. In the 1890s, to hop aboard a train down in Denver, ride that train all the way up over the Georgetown Loop, have a picnic in SilverPlume, and then get back on the train and be back in Denver in time for supper. That business was so popular, in fact, that as many as 7 passenger trains a day departed Denver's Union Station bound for SilverPlume. Colorado and Southern discontinued passenger service on this line altogether. From then on, they were only running freight trains up and down the canyon, and even that business had begun to dwindle. In 1934, the railroad filed for bankruptcy. As the Great Depression went on, things only got worse for the Colorado and Southern. In 1939, this division was completely out of money, and they filed for abandonment of the line. Between 1939 and 1941, all of the rails between SilverPlume and Golden were torn up and sold for scrap. So you're probably wondering, since the railroad was scrapped starting in the late 1930s, how are we riding on it today? Well, in the 1950s, the Colorado Historical Society Railroad. During that time, however, the highway to Purple was building the interstate highways, and at our pace, the concrete wonder on the opposite side of the canyon, I-70. The original plan was to have I-70 was supposed to come straight up the valley floor, which was using materials donated by the Union Pacific Railroad, as well as services offered by the United States Navy Seabees. The Historical Society began laying tracks from SilverPlume down toward Georgetown. Narrow gauge railroad equipment that was owned by Lindsay and Rosa Ashby was available and operating on their Swiss Railroad in Central City, Colorado. With the Ashby's locomotives and expertise in narrow gauge train operations, they were able to restore passenger service on the partially reconstructed Georgetown Loop in the summer of 1975. Then, after a decade of construction and acquiring a $1 million grant from the Fetcher Foundation, the Historical Society completed the reconstructed Devil's Gate High Bridge on August 1st, Colorado Day, 1984, just after the railroad's 100th anniversary. The Georgetown Loop has been in operation every year ever since. The train is now going to go around what is called the High Hill Curve. Now, this is arguably the most scenic portion of the entire railroad. As we go around the curve, views off to the left-hand side, you might get a good glimpse of our locomotive number 40 as she navigates our train around the tightest curve on our railroad. However, if you wait a moment, you look off to the right-hand side of the train. As soon as we clear the train, you'll get a view down the canyon to the Devil's Gate High Bridge and the town of Georgetown beyond. Now, this large open area you can see off to the left-hand side of the train is known as the outfield. Because a little further down the track goes a large grove of aspen trees. And at the mining hall, that grove of aspen was actually a baseball field that the miners had put in place to play with ball with their family on the weekends. Now, my sources tell me that those miners were quite possibly the original Colorado Rockies Major League Baseball team. I don't know how true that information is, though, because I know that back in the 1890s, they only could have been playing in the minor league. Yeah, that goes just playing on something that doesn't get job. Between the ages of 7 and 14 were employed by the railroad known as powder monkeys. Powder monkeys were paid a wage between 50 and 75 cents a day, and their natural speed and agility gave them the ability to light the fuse and run away before seeing granite came raining down upon them. So please remember that the next time you're complaining about having to clean your room, there are far worse things than parents would have you doing with that. In just a moment, we're going to cross over Clear Creek for the first of 4 times on our descent from SilverPlume. Now, as we cross the bridge, you might get a good glimpse of some of Clear Creek's waterfalls. However, if you wish to get a picture, I recommend that you hold your camera pretty high, because the sides of this bridge are infinite for photo bombing. Now, After we cross the bridge, we entering a cut in the side of the mountain. And as we go through the cut, I'd like you to notice the stone retaining walls on either side of the train. These walls have been standing for 140 years. They were laid by quarters and well-sited so that the known as dry stacking. If you look very closely at these walls, you see there is no mortar or cement holding them together. They're held up completely by friction and gravity alone. These walls have required very little maintenance over the past century, and the metal retaining bolts you see on the left-hand side were added after the construction of I-70 only to ensure the wall's stability. Now, as we exit the cut here, we will cross over Clear Creek for the second time on our descent from SilverPlume. This bridge usually has much better views of the creek than the first one does. And after crossing the second bridge, I'd like everybody to try and look off to the left-hand side of the train. You might notice my good friend Charlie sitting at his mining camp. Now, old Charlie has been sitting at that camp ever since the mine closed waiting for the train. However, no one's had the heart to tell him that the train doesn't stop here. He's lost a little bit of weight over the last few decades, but it looks like he's doing okay to me. Last trip, someone told me he's all skin and bones, but unfortunately, I don't even think he has any skin anymore. We're now waiting for a warning whistle from our locomotive that will actually mean our train is coming to a stop. The weekends get so busy here at the Georgetown loop that in order to keep up with the demand, we have to run 2 trains. Because we're running 2 trains on opposing schedules, one train has to get out of the way of the other. That's exactly what we're doing. We're going to be pulling into what we call a siding, or we're literally getting sidetracked here, so that we can clear the main line track for the opposing train to pass us in the other direction. This location that we'll be stopping in is known as Hall Tunnel. I'll tell you folks a little bit more about Hall Tunnel when we return here on our return trip to SilverPlume. But this is one of 2 stops that we will be making here at Hall Tunnel. Now, when the other train passes us, they'll be passing us on what is now the left-hand side of the train. Now, folks, it'll be a very good photo opportunity to get pictures of the other train. Will be passing by within 1 foot of our train, so do not. Alrighty, folks, it's a spiral, not a circle. Also, when you think about it, what good does a circle of railroad track do? It gets you from point A right back to point A. Really good for going around your Christmas tree, but not much else. Like all railroads, our line was designed to take you from one place to another. That's exactly what it does. In just a moment, I'm sure we'll be entering a curve where if you look off to the left-hand side of the train and down the hillways, you'll see a set of railroad tracks. Now, we'll be on those tracks here in just a few minutes after we cross the Devil's Gate High Bridge and descend to the opposing side of the canyon. You see, it is right here at this spot that the Georgetown loop from which we get our name begins. The story of the loop is that it was the surveyor's answer for the problem of getting a railroad from Georgetown to SilverPlume. On paper, it seems pretty simple. The towns are only 2 miles apart, so just take 2 miles of track, right? Wrong. Even though the towns only lie 2 miles apart, they differ in elevation by about 650 feet. If the track lays straight up the valley floor, would have reduced the grade of well over 6%, which is far too steep for a normal railroad. If you look across the canyon to I-70, the grade you see there varies between 6 and 7%. You'll see semi-trucks that go up that hill have a really hard time hauling 1 trailer. So could you imagine a small steam locomotive attempting to haul 6 loaded freight cars up that same hill? It definitely would not be able to make the trip. The surveyors therefore designed a line that could or loop over itself to gain elevation. Now, this increased mileage by track between the 2 towns to 4.5 miles. However, it decreased the average rate on the railroad to 3.5%, which was much more manageable for the small locomotives of the late 1800s. Here in just a moment, we'll be entering across the Devil's Gate High Bridge. That being said, if there's anyone on board that has a fear of heights and is nervous about crossing the high bridge, I might actually have a solution for you. I want you to look down onto the floor of the rail car you're sitting in. Somewhere on the floor, you're bound to find a small pebble. Now, if you're close enough to this pebble, I want you to reach down and pick it up, roll it between your fingers. Just when you roll this pebble between your fingers, I can guarantee you that you will feel a little bolder.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, just like the train, the jokes only go downhill from here. In all seriousness, though, if you do have a fear of this bridge, I promise you, you'll get over it. Back when this bridge was being built, it actually took them 3 separate attempts to build it. The first time they completed the bridge in September of 1883, the chief engineer discovered to his horror that his workers built the entire bridge backwards. How do you build a bridge backwards, you ask? Well, you see the bridge lies on a curve at a grade of about 2%, meaning the side we just entered on is higher than the side we exit off of. Turns out that when they first built the bridge, they put the high end of the bridge on the low side of the canyon, and vice versa. So the entire bridge had to be dismantled and rebuilt. I'm going to interrupt my spiel here for a sec and have you folks look west up the canyon. You can see the engine 111 is now going over the high hill curve. Now, the second time that they completed this bridge in November of 1883, large sections were condemned by the inspector for hasty, improper riveting. So once again, the bridge had to be dismantled and rebuilt. Now, as the old saying goes, third time's a charm, but the third time they built the bridge, they finally got it right. The first train was able to roll across it on April 28th of 1884. Now, the men that built that original bridge certainly don't like going down in history this way. However, I sure like remembering them as historical proof that men do not follow directions. Here in just a moment, we're going to hear a nationally recognized railroad signal. It will signify a railroad crossing. It consists of 2 long, 1 short, and another long blast of a whistle. Now, those of you that know Morse code, you probably recognize that as the letter Q. You're probably wondering, what does the letter Q have to do with railroading? That's an excellent question, because the answer is not a darn thing. The signal dates back to Victorian England. Steamships that had Queen Victoria on board would signal the letter Q to all other vessels to let them know that they have the Queen aboard, and therefore have the right of way. We adopted this signal for railroads here in the United States, not to indicate any form of monarchy, but to show that trains always carry the right of way. So, if you're ever waiting at a railroad crossing and you hear 2 long, 1 short, and another long blast of a horn or a whistle, you're definitely going to want to stop, look, listen, and live, because that train is not going to be stopping for you. Based on the way each plays back signal, and each engineer plays it a little bit differently as a sort of signature. And I can tell you the signal you just heard definitely came from today's engineer, Tim. Now, after we come to the crossing, we pass over Clear Creek for the 4th and final time on our descent from SilverPlume. We come just over a mile as the crow flies from SilverPlume. However, we use 3 miles of track to get here. By the time we arrive at Devil's Cave, we will have dropped 560 feet in elevation from SilverPlume. That being said, ladies and gentlemen, we will now be arriving at the Devil's Gate station in Georgetown, the eastern end of the line. Folks, this will be the halfway point of our train ride today. The train will be stopping here for just a few brief moments while we disconnect the locomotive and move it to the other end of the train. Now, during this stop, you may feel free to step off the train and go visit the gift shop or use the restroom. However, please keep in mind that our scheduled departure time is 12:05. So, if you do get off the train, please be back on board before 12:05. I also want to let you know that I am not going to save your seat for you. Seating is always first come, first serve on board this train. So if you like the seat you have now, I recommend you please someone on board to save your seats for you. With that, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Devil's Gate, Georgetown, elevation 8,650 feet above sea level.
Remember, I just explained it to you. Powder. The black powder.
So one of the center lights.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you probably noticed our train has now come to a stop here atop the Devil's Gate High Bridge. This is so that we can take in the sights and sounds of our valley. Now, to the left-hand side of our train, to the east, you can see the town of Georgetown. Now, Georgetown is actually the conglomeration of what was originally two different towns, Georgetown and Elizabethtown. Now, George and Elizabeth Griffin were siblings that founded two different towns in the same valley. Over time, the two towns bled into each other, and they decided to keep the name Georgetown once they became one town.
I thought I knew everything.
You're gonna learn today.
Sailing fields all the way up on the west side of the mine.
off to the right-hand side of the train, to our west, is the Devil's Gate boarding area where we stopped earlier. You might be wondering about these mountains that are surrounding us. Directly to our west is Leavenworth Mountain. Alrighty folks, so our train has once again come to a stop here at Hall Tunnel. You may feel free to stand up, stretch your legs, move to another car if you so wish. Once again folks, please don't sit on the sides of the car or stand on the seats while we're stopped here. We're waiting for the opposing train to pass us. It's going to pass us on what is now the right-hand side of our train here in just a few minutes. Now finally, the stone-lined trench that sits to the right of the air compressor is the entrance to the Hall Tunnel. Now, although it's unclear how much silver the Hall Tunnel produced over its lifespan, it had to have been extremely profitable. This mine outlasted the repeal of the Sherman Silver Purchase Act in 1893. It outlasted World War I, outlasted the Great Depression, and even outlasted the railroad that served it. This mine finally shut its doors for good in March of 1942.